Welcome to another episode of Burning Discussion. I am your host, Extermicide, and I am with my partner in crime here, Gandex, the man who is still pissed off because he hasn't seen the movie Constipation because it hasn't come out yet.
I have no idea what that movie is or is about. I am kind of excited that the whole Karen movie isn't a spoof though. That was
That's like
pretty
the
funny.
stupidest joke in the world. Constipation, it hasn't come out yet. Okay.
I didn't even put two and two together.
So, anyway, how you been doing, bud?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. You?
Doing good. Anything happening on your end of the woods?
Just getting streams all sorted out. This is my first actual live stream on Twitch.
Congrats.
Hopefully everything goes well, but we'll see. So
Anybody joining his stream today, send him some love. Give him a freaking follow. Come on. Everybody was freaking new at this at one point, so show some love. So, over here in my neck of the woods, this has actually been a really freaking interesting week. Really been doing kind of let's just simply put it. I am a firm believer that you get out of life what you put into it, and I started putting more into it. I've been dedicating myself even more to it, maybe 3 times as much now. And the comments that I have been receiving leads me to believe that I'm on the right track with everything right now. So I am humbled and blessed that people are actually liking the content they're receiving from us so far. And I hope you guys continue to join us each week to get whatever information that we bring to you. Remember that everything that we bring to you is to be taken with a grain of salt. It's taken based on information that we have. It is based on information from the alphas. So things are subject to change and probably will. So just keep that in mind. And as always, we are always. Are you there, Gandex?
yeah, I'm here.
Okay, you are sitting
I
so
was just
damn still. I thought your
just
freaking camera
waiting
froze.
patiently. No, just waiting patiently for you to finish your little intro spiel.
We are always looking for other people who might want to be on the show. If whether or not you're a guild leader or maybe you're just a super fan who knows a lot about Ashes and thinks that this is something that you could have fun with and help support the community. If you're interested in something like that, over on my Twitter, Extermicide XXX. That's Extermicide with 3 X's, and I will make sure it gets posted right there. Shoot me a private message if you're interested in being on the show. We'll hook up in Discord. We'll have a little chat. We'll see if we mesh well with one another, and if so, like I said, we're always looking for someone else who will want to share some of their viewpoints on whatever the topic is that week.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to be necessarily super knowledgeable about something or in a position of power per se. Even if you're just passionate about this game, that's stuff that we want to hear with from other people. That's part of the reason I got into this, is I'm just super passionate about this game and I want it to go somewhere. And I like I like talking about it. I can talk about this all day if I had the opportunity to do.
Yeah, I just like hearing my own voice. No, but seriously, guys, we 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 are really passionate about this game. We want to see it succeed, and we know that there's a whole plethora of people out there who don't even know this game is on the horizon yet, and we're trying to get the content and the information out there and hopefully attract more and more people because how many MMOs have we seen over the years that come out and are dead within a couple months. This is the one we don't want to see fail. This is the one that actually has, in my opinion, the most potential to really give us everything that we've been wanting as an MMO player for freaking years. Everything that we've been asking for years. This has the most potential to deliver on. So if you haven't signed up for the game yet, there's a link down below. It will help support this stream. It's free to join. The game costs you nothing out of the out of pocket. It's just going to, charge you $15 a month, and try it for a month. See if you like it, and if you don't pay for the next month.
New subscription received. Dispensing gratitude.
Thank you for that new
Gratitude
sub.
dispensed.
Okay, so we ready to get this kicked off?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. As always, we don't go by any script here and everything, and I usually bring the questions to the table, and Gandex usually here blind, and he doesn't know what the subject is going to be. But
sometimes I have a little forewarning, but this week is totally unaware.
But this is an easy subject this week. I'm hoping we can stretch this out because there's going to be a lot of theory crafting here. It's something that needs a lot of theory crafting. If we start to really theory craft about it, it comes into a light where you realize how important this subject is. So in any MMO, I think all of you will agree, and I think definitely you'll agree, Gandex, that immersion is one of the most important things to have in any MMO. Okay, the world that we're playing, we need to get sucked in. We need to feel that it's believable. And with that said, Ashes of Creation is doing a good job of bringing many different ways of immersion, of immersing the player into the world of Vera. But one of the most interesting ways, to me at least, has to do with their seasons, with the whole seasons aspect that they're adding into the game. And that's what we're going to do as a subject today. We're going to talk about how seasons affect your gameplay, your immersion into Ashes of Creation.
And just to clarify, are you talking about like environmental seasons, or are you talking about like, okay, so yeah,
weather and your actual seasons in the game. So before we even start talking about Ashes of Creation, and it doesn't have to necessarily be an MMO. What games have you played that you thought had really, really good weather?
that
stands out to you.
Honestly, I don't have a single game that stands out as far as weather patterns go. It's always been kind of a afterthought, in my opinion. Like, I haven't played any games where weather was a determining factor. Some people might argue Fallout games, but even that, I feel like it was almost an afterthought to throw in storms like that. Elder Scrolls games, I mean, it's the same company, Bethesda, but it's I don't actually have a game off the top of my head that weather stands out to me.
I think the first MMO that I played where I actually saw some random weather in the game was WoW. Not that
But
it
even
really
then,
stood
it
out.
was,
it was kind of, a little
it was
rain
minimal.
here and there.
Yeah, it was
Yes,
minimal,
exactly. I think the first game that I actually played where the weather actually had an impact was probably Battlefield 4. There was a certain island map that all of a sudden a big ass storm would start on the map, and it would be blowing sand up on the island. It actually impeded your vision, so you made it harder to make those shots, which in a first person shooter is everything. And then later in Battlefield 1, which almost all the maps in that game took place in the desert, and they would have these like sandstorms and everything. I like the fact that they added that element of weather into those types of games. And to me, any kind of game where you can kind of break up the monotony of everything being the same every day and just have something random just pop in front of you is a huge freaking plus as far as I'm concerned. I think you would agree with that.
Yeah, and you bring up Battlefield 1, and that was one of the ones that kind of came to mind for me as far as weather. But it still, to me, it didn't feel enough. It didn't feel immersive enough as far as weather goes. And I don't know, maybe it's just my perception. So that just might be a me thing. But
No, no, and I get where you're coming from. The weather in the Battlefield games was something that just happened randomly, and it only happened random. It only happened randomly on certain maps. So, I mean, you could play the same map 5 times and not see any weather change, but all of a sudden, boom, there was just this big ass storm, and it was cool for what it
Mhm.
was. But we've already touched base on WoW having their little bit of weather in it and having it being kind of minimalistic and everything. And seasons in Ashes of Creation, just like everything else that the Intrepid team is bringing to the table, they seem to want to step it up a notch and just do something that the other guys are not doing, or what the other guys are doing, but let's do it better. Um, so, a quick little description about the seasons. Intrepid is giving us a true 4 season, 1 year experience. Every week represents a season. So every real world month that we have, we will experience a full year's worth of changing climate in the game. Spring turns to summer, summer into fall, fall into winter, and then back to spring. Um,
I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like that's accelerated way too fast.
and that's exactly where I was getting to. I was trying to figure out how I'm going to word this. Um, Honestly, there's a book going on Reddit right now on what people would prefer for the time limit to be. I honestly am kind of in the group of people who think that each season should probably be a month, and we can get a full year's worth of seasons in the game 3 times a year.
Yeah.
You think a month's time would be a good time?
I think that it's a relatively fair balance. Obviously, months aren't exact time frames, um, but even if it wasn't a month, every 4 weeks, that would be. I feel like it'd be
Four
enough where
weeks
you
is a
can.
month.
4 weeks is 28 days, 31 days, 30 days, sometimes 28 days, 29 days. It's Earth sucks. To a certain point. Uh, but it's gonna be. I feel like a week is gonna be not be enough time to be immersed in it. That's all I'm saying. I also think that if they're gonna do climate changes like that, they need to do it based on what region you're in too, and have it fluctuate. Because a region that's gonna be, where there's snow most of the time, winter should be longer than any of the other seasons. But
See, my
that's
whole
a
thing with
thought.
it, being longer stems from when we get through all the rest of the stuff in here. And if you're joining us now, we're talking about seasons within Ashes of Creation and whether or not we think the time limit should be longer than 1 week for each season. Um, Honestly, there is pluses and negatives with the whole system of there being seasons that affect all sorts of different gameplay, which we will touch base on during the course of this episode. But because there are those pluses and there's those negatives, I think if the time limit for a season is only 1 week, it's too fast. You're not really having to compensate for the negatives that come up. Um, you might be one of those people who doesn't log in every single day. So, let's say you log in maybe twice a week. Every time you log in, it's going to be a different freaking season. I just think that time needs to be freaking longer, and then it's something that your character, in some way, shape, or form, is going to have to adapt to in the game.
Even if you don't have to adapt to it, I feel like a week is too short to be immersed into something. That's
Well,
all I'm saying. As far as like a weather pattern goes, or it's not even a weather pattern. It's a season. Like a season's meant to be, a long time. That's how we experience it
now,
in
now,
real
now
world.
let's make it real clear. Seasons are not going to affect every area of the game. The game is divided up into
Mhm.
what they call biomes, and there are certain areas that won't see any kind of relative climate change. They're the same weather all year round. But then there's the areas where they're going to experience multiple seasons. So there are the different aspects of the land as far as weather and everything goes. And this all brings us to our world changes. And as we start to go through this list and everything, you'll start to see there's a lot happening here. And this is why we're kind of saying, a week for a season, a full year in a month's time, way, way, way freaking too fast. They gotta slow this down. And I really, like I said, there's a vote on Reddit happening right now where you can voice your opinion on this. And right now, not staying. There's a couple of there's four different options to vote on, but the one that's losing big time is the week long season.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's the least popular.
We'll see. Hopefully they have it out in Alpha 1 and we get to voice our opinion then as well. So
Yes. So we're going to talk about like right now some of the world changes that actually happened. Okay. So not only will the world look differently, but it will actually act differently in response to the climate change. For example, lakes that you once had to travel around will freeze over, and now you can walk straight across them. And maybe there was a dungeon entrance at the bottom of that lake, and now you can't get to it because it's frozen solid. And maybe that was one of your favorite fishing spots, but now you can't fish there anymore because it's frozen over. And we haven't had any confirmation on whether or not there's going to be ice fishing allowed in the game, which would be interesting. It's a
to build
possibility.
a shack, yeah. Have to build a shack.
But, right there, I just gave a couple of examples of how the world changes, and it's going to actually affect the way your character travels in the game a little bit.
So I think, let's say that's the case. Let's say there's a lake that freezes over and there's a dungeon underneath of it. I think it makes it more important to have the time even longer. Make that dungeon
I agree.
less accessible. It makes it a more important feature because of the lack of accessibility. Also,
we're all going to walk around pulling a Game of Thrones saying winter is coming. Winter is coming.
Yeah. With that being said, the dungeon's inaccessible, but we are now able to travel, from here across the other side of the lake, much quicker. And they might do a whole risk of falling in the ice and shit. That'd be kind of cool.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
But I don't think they're going to do that. But
especially if you're bringing a caravan across a frozen lake and it fills in. Oh my god, that'd be so cool.
Yeah, that would suck. I think the first time that happened, everyone's just like, nope, we're taking the long way. But it makes that route more important for that period of time. It makes you able to strategize. Well, a week is just it's more of an inconvenience than anything.
Exactly.
I don't know. I think that's more of an inconvenience. Where I think a month feels better.
I think that probably they're going to test it out with the whole week thing, and I can't see them staying with it. If they want the and again, this goes back to the whole immersion thing of it. If you really want to immerse people and have them feel like they're in a believable world and everything, yeah, seasons don't change that fast in the real world. Sorry, I mean they won't change that fast if we did it a month long, but at least then you have to actually deal with the weather, the consequences of the weather. I mean, you're going to have to somehow deal with it.
Yeah, you can't just take a week off and then, it's spring again. I don't necessarily. I wouldn't be opposed to the idea of them following real world seasons, and obviously, depending on where you live, seasons are different.
Exactly.
But with that being said, let's say they did North American seasons. I wouldn't be opposed to that concept, where every 3 months is a new season.
I think everything will be very similar to what we deal with in the real world, but they have to get the time down right. And I mean, right now, I think one of the most important things they have to nail down wholeheartedly, the first thing they have to nail down correctly is combat in the game. They have to get that right. And after that, they can start worrying about everything else.
I think combat has come a long way, though.
Yes, we're going to be doing 1 week for seasons as a battle.
Apocalypse. That's what combat. But I mean, that's what Apocalypse was for. Was combat. It was to test combat. It was to test their hybrid system. So I think combat is going to be more fleshed out than we assume it is right now.
They're saying right now that they're still working diligently on it.
I'm sure they are.
It's a thing of having to tweak and retweak and then retweak again, and eventually they will get it down right. And that's where all the freaking the upcoming alphas and the betas are really going to come into play. Because again, there's for a lot of us, we're looking at this as probably the last attempt at trying to play an MMO. If this one fails us, also like ones in the past, we probably won't touch another MMO again in our lifetime. We'll be done with it. We'll wash our hands, say that's it. I'm done being screwed over. That's it. And I think right now, with this game, they want to get it right. They want to get everything right, and we have a voicerous freaking community who all want to see this succeed, and they're not beyond freaking holding back and saying, "Look, this ain't working. This needs to be changed." And they're being very productive about it, from what I've seen from the forums too. They're not just saying this sucks, take it out. They're saying this sucks because, and then they give examples, and then they're letting a Intrepid, read that and kind of
They also
take it
usually give
from
back
there.
constructive feedback too, where this sucks because this. I think if we, if you go this way, this is a better route. That's a common thing. People aren't just bashing it for no reason. They're actually giving constructive
Thank you for
feedback.
following.
Thanks for the follow.
I almost agree with you about your little spiel there you had, except how many of us have played WoW, got tired of that shit, got bored of it, and then next X-Pack, back to playing WoW. I mean, everyone's done it. So
No. I broke cleanly, man. After Burning Crusade, I
Okay.
said that's it, and I must be a rarity because I know a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I haven't played BFA. I'm not gonna play Shadowlands, but I've played every expansion. Well, whether it was only a few weeks or it was several months, I've played pretty much every expansion except for the last two, or the last one and the one that's coming up. But
But have you ever been in a period of time where you're not playing WoW for a little bit, and all of a sudden you start to actually miss it, or do you just go back
all the time?
Really?
I missed it. I went back to playing Classic mostly because of nostalgia factor. I miss that era. Of course, back then we didn't have as much access to knowledge as we do now. Like a lot of things you learn from other players, or Alakazam, Thoughtbot, things that sort of kind of worked, but sort of kind of didn't. So, but this is not a WoW rant, so let's.
No, let's reel this back in and get back on topic here. So most of this conversation today will be about the weather in Vera, which is is the world, the upper world, but there is the underworld. Okay, and believe it or not, weather actually comes into play with the underworld, and this is something when I first was reading about the seasons and everything, the underworld part of Vera just never popped in my mind as far as when you're talking about seasons, you're thinking about seasons. So even in the underworld, the weather is going to have some kind of way of affecting what's going on down there. For example, when winter ends and spring has started, the snow in the world is going to start to melt. But down below in the underworld, that water from the melting snow starts to make its way in and has started flooding different caverns and changing the complete layout of the map down there. To me, this is freaking cool. This is actually a very freaking cool concept.
So I want to point out that if you feel like this is a new concept, you must not have read any of R.A. Salvatore's books. For those of you who play Dungeons and Dragons, have read, books along those lines, the Underdark, which is their effective Underrealm, has seasons. That it's a concept it's well thought out. It's been around for a long time, but for a lot of people who aren't engrossed in that kind of thing, it is going to be a new concept. So, and it is interesting. It's interesting the way they're going to implement it, because it's not the same way that it has been implemented into.
Is that the
Forgotten
Dark
Realms.
Elf series?
Yes, it is. I mean, he writes other books too, but he mostly is known for that.
Okay. So to you, this isn't really something new. To me, it is. As far as me and an MMO goes, I have never seen weather. Well, and again, weather is going to be a lot different in this game than it has been in other MMOs. But I've never really seen the current weather system up above affecting what's going on down here
Yeah,
and
and I
having
agree with you.
change.
I have not seen an MMO that has actual weather patterns. Like there's like WoW, there's the random storms and stuff. Probably the closest one that was the most complicated was Final Fantasy 11, but that was more of moon cycles, and that reflected around real world things. Um, those of you who've played Final Fantasy 11 and have crafted a lot, you will understand what I'm talking about. There was literally a clock you could buy to help you optimize your crafting, because depending on what you were making, depending on what
I
time of
wholeheartedly
day it
agree.
was, what the moon cycle was, etc., it had an impact on it. Um, that was probably the most complicated system, but they didn't have seasons. So
Yeah, I got a guy in my chat saying that even though the concept isn't new, to actually see it implemented into a game is
into
going
an
to just be
MMO
truly amazing.
is new, and it's great. I love the fact that they're going to do it, especially with the Underrealm too. But again, yeah, the concept isn't new, so to me, it's not surprising. That especially, I think it's not surprising to me that Ashes is doing this, or attempting to do this at least, because of everything else they're trying to implement.
And I've said
So
this 100. You've heard me say this 100 times, and I'll say it again for people watching right now. I am of the firm belief, Stephen from Intrepid has promised a lot of stuff with this game. I think it's really going to revolutionize what an MMO. It's going to reset the bar as to what an MMO should be,
mhm.
in my opinion. Um, and at this point, I honestly believe if he only delivers half of the freaking promises, this game is going to be a success. Because I mean, the stuff that he is promising is just very innovating. It's he's taking a real initiative here, and really trying to do. You hope that he's not trying to do too much. He's not putting too much on his plate where just realistically it's not going to be feasible to accomplish all this. But every time we see a developer update and everything, we're seeing these things come into fruition, and we're seeing that everything is coming alive, and he seems to be making good on everything that he's been promising.
It might be taking longer than we had hoped for, but
Yeah, that goes without saying.
it's all coming together, man. And every time, like you said, every time we see a development update, everything is looking more and more polished. It's getting there. It you know
So
I'm excited.
a week or was it a week ago so ago, you and I did
Mhm.
a video about economy, and
You know,
during
yeah, week and a half
maybe
ago.
maybe 2 weeks ago. So we did a whole discussion about economy, and the one thing that never did come up in that conversation was anything about seasons. You don't think the weather in seasons, when you think about the economy.
That's a good point. We didn't bring that up. I
So
don't think.
I just want to give a couple examples here, and then we can sit there and
Yeah,
brainstorm about this. Okay, so economy is very important in Astros of Creation as it's going to affect the climate of the changing seasons. In the summer, the growth of everything is thriving. There's plenty of trees to cut down for woodworking and plants to gather for herbalism. But when winter comes, some of these trees will die, and most of those plants won't be able to grow at all. Some plants might only grow in like cooler environments to begin with. So maybe your normal routine to harvest that particular plant is to head north to the tallest snow-covered peaks. But once winter hits, that hard to get plant is all of a sudden much easier to come by. Um, this will create a buy sell some buy sell strategies in the world. In the summer, do you sell all those plants really cheap because they're readily available, or do you bank them and you wait till winter arrives and wait for a time when those plants are no longer growing because it's too cold, and then you can sit there and sell them at a marked up price? Um, there's going to be a lot of different strategies, I think, that are going to come into play as far as the economy goes concerning the change of seasons.
Yes, I agree with you. As far as plants go, the one thing that comes to mind is, and we do not know this yet, will those plants have a lifespan? Will they have a duration? Because if they do, you might not be able to hold out too long and try to charge a premium in the wintertime for them. You might have to sell
I
them.
never even thought of that.
And that's something like I never thought of it until just now. It just dawned on me because, yeah, you get them in the summertime and they're easy to come by. Everyone can get them. They're going to sell for a baseline value. But in the wintertime, they're going to be hard to come by. But let's say they have a lifespan, and we don't know if they do or not. But let's say they have a lifespan, and you're going to try to charge a premium. Well, once that lifespan starts dwindling, if you're going to want to get any money out of them before they turn to dust, you're going to have to lower the price and sell them for possibly cheaper than what is in the summertime. And some people might hold out for that. I don't know.
And this kind of goes back to our very first discussion there on whether or not season should be only a week long, because I think if you're gathering stuff for a week and then the next week it's a different season, and then you're not giving the stuff a chance to sell out and become a unique item to sell at a higher price.
And they might do that because of lifespan, and I don't know. I don't know what their lifespan is. They could make it longer, but if you look at like real world, and I'm using plants specifically, other things might have, wood has a lifespan, but it's exceedingly long as long as it's kept in the right conditions.
Keep in mind, guys. I have people actually asking in chat if plants do go bad over time. We don't know. So
this is speculation.
Theory, this could be something they might add to the game.
It's the only thing that I can think of off the top of my head of why they might implement the seasons for such a short period of time is because certain resources will have a lifespan. I don't know if they will or not, because like I'll use WoW as an example. You can go catch fish and they can chill. Raw fish can chill in your inventory for years, literally years, and they're not going to go bad. But they might go bad. Fish might go bad if you catch them after a few days, like real world days. We don't know. And if they do, that would then, dictate how the market's going to react to it.
So if you had to place a vote, would you want to have a lifespan on those kind of items or not?
I think if you're going to have a lifespan on certain things, you're going to have a lifespan on a lot of things. There's going to be very few things that can't have a lifespan. And the weird thing is, I'm going to be a blacksmith, so most of my things probably realistically wouldn't have a lifespan. Metal erodes, and
I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna assume that they wouldn't do a lifespan, and it would be because of fairness. If you're gonna be a blacksmith, and again, you're not gonna have really items that are gonna go bad. Exactly. That's not really fair to the people who chose herbalism as a profession, and everything they pick has a risk of going bad.
And I agree with you, but that's one thought. I'm just saying. Let's say they did. That's one thing that you'd have to balance out with the seasons. On when to sell it. Like if you're going to try to hold out, you can try to hold out, but if you're going to make money off of it, you got to sell it before it goes bad. And let's say, if they don't have a lifespan, then you're going to probably make a premium in the wintertime.
And and again, that would make sense to have the longer seasons. So the current stock that's in the auction houses or whatever has a chance to sell out. Now no one has this particular plant. You have a plethora of it because you've been harvesting it all freaking spring and summer. Mm-hmm. Now you stand to make a freaking good amount of freaking money because you thought ahead.
And that could be a case. I'm trying to think what they would do for ore, like minerals. Obviously, you're gonna have to go to the mountainous regions to get the best, have the most diversity of it and have the most largest quantities of nodes to find. So I don't know if they're going to make snow, like let's say wintertime, if it's going to impact how you travel, if it's going to impact how you find nodes, like mineral nodes. I don't know if it's going to impact that. Because if it did, then that would have an impact on, that aspect of the economy.
I partially know the answer, but we haven't got to that part yet. So,
if you want to skip ahead.
No. The next thing I want to talk about, sticking with the whole economy thing, would be actually we know everybody can have their own little homestead, and some people are going to choose just to be like a farmer in the game. The typical farmer who grows his own crops for food will find that he has to maintain certain crop cycles, as some crops are seasonal. And during a heat wave in the middle of summer, his crops may need more watering, or else they will wither and die. An early frost or winter might damage or destroy his current harvest. Farming might not be as easy as plant it, grow it, pick it, and as seasons will add a whole new host of problems to the unprepared farmer.
So I like that. I don't want them to go like full on farming simulator, but I do want it to be complex. I want them to have crop rotation in the real world.
I'm hoping it's not going to become something like the Facebook games or even RuneScape,
Exactly.
where we have
I
to
don't
worry
want it to
about
be-
watering our plants every time we log in, and that's all you do for an hour is
Well,
water your plants.
So like we were talking on the economy episode, as a tavern owner, you're gonna have to hire people, NPCs. As a farmer to tend your crops, you might have to hire
Gotcha.
NPCs to help tend your crops. I
Your
don't
whole
know.
farm,
I
yeah.
mean, if you have to do it for a tavern, I would assume, plants need tending to.
And right
or
there,
from the tribe.
and with all that, we're just talking about the planting and growing aspect of farming. What about the livestock on your farm? How will the season affect your livestock?
That is a good question. But let's go back to the plants for now, because I'm not done yet. So, in real world,
Rent.
certain crops like corn actually suck a lot of nutrients out of the soil. And if you do not do a crop rotation, you end up with what is a dust bowl, like we had back in the 30s or whatever the hell it was, where soil is literally unusable. You can't grow anything there because all the nutrients are sucked out of it. So I kind of want them to do a crop rotation and make people actually have to think about that, because if they do, it'll be such a huge shock to people who they don't know anything about like real world, like even a vegetable garden. You got to think about where you can't grow the same vegetable in the same spot. You have to.
I have a real strange
but-
feeling that when this does get implemented live, we're going to see a plethora of like YouTube videos showing proper crop rotations for certain zones.
I can guarantee. I mean, maybe not as soon as it's live. Probably a few months after, when people figure it out. If we don't know about it previously, but because I don't know if we'll have everything figured out by the time it's launched from all the alphas and betas. But like Ark, those of you who have played Ark, when you grow things, there's specific ways to maximize how you gain yield out of those. And, other ways work, but there are better strategies, and that might be one of the things that Ashes takes into account, is that there's going to be certain things you want to do to maximize yield out of your crops.
I'm going to let you answer this question from one of the viewers. They're actually asking what we both think. I'm kind of like undecided in my head.
Oh, well, I mean, you can answer after me then if you want.
Okay, so do you think it's worth it to have such an ever-changing crop and such that it takes away from the rest of the game? You will literally have full-time farmers, which is like such a small percentile to the rest of the game.
Do I think it's worth it to have it be a complex system? I do, because I've said this numerous times in our chats. I've said it off screen a million times. My friends knows I do not like a game that holds your hand. So if all you're doing is you're logging in and let me plant my crops, give them some water, and then log off for the day, it's not immersive. You're not doing your due diligence. As a blacksmith, I expect the actual blacksmithing to take a long time. Like blacksmithing in WoW, some people thought it took for freaking ever when you were like making a rare sword or something. It had like a 1.5-minute timer to craft this thing. But in the real world, you know how long it takes to make an actual sword? It takes days or weeks to full, start to finish. I don't expect the game to take that long, but I expect it to be a complex system. I don't expect blacksmiths to be able to crank things out quickly. I expect it to be rewarding for the effort you're putting into it.
And
Animal husbandry,
no,
I think
let's
is
not go there yet. Let's not go there yet.
well, I was going to talk about how I think that's going to be the most rewarding. It's going to have the longest turnover on your return on interest. So the time you put into it, I think it's going to take so long in order for you to gain any benefit out of it. But that personal feeling of satisfaction that I did this, I made this, I sold this for X amount of money now. That's going to be a huge personal achievement for you. And I think depending on what you're doing, you're going to get that. But
I think what we're going to find here is that if you're used to something like WoW, you can pretty much get your money if you want to just go find, there's a pack of wolves over here and you just want to kill those wolves over and over again and they're dropping a few silvery with each kill and everything. You can sit there and grind the hell out of mobs and get your money. Unfortunately, Ashes of Creation does not run that way. Beasts are not going to be dropping weapons and armor and money because this is something that they would not be carrying anyway. Some humanoid creatures may drop these kind of items because there's the possibility that they actually use the currency or they actually use the weapons or whatever. So grinding, I don't think we're going to see the kind of bots that we used to see in other MMOs that are going around grinding for freaking gold, which I think is going to limit the gold farmers and everything. And I think the people who actually do end up having money in the game are someone is going to be the smarter type player. He's going to team up with his buddy and says, "Hey, why don't you and I work together? Let's start a freaking tavern." Or let's start a farm and, we'll take turns, when you're off, I'll take care of the farm. We don't have to put all of our waking moments into it and everything, but let's kind of build it up together and we'll split the proceeds or whatever and work out something on an economic front. And I think that's kind of where they're trying to go with this game is they really want people to have to not be so self-reliant. You're not the guy who goes out and harvests that stuff and then creates it and puts on, you need at some point to actually approach another human being and say, "Look, I need your services. Let's exchange cash." And there's going to be that constant exchange of communication and currency.
well, you bring that up. As with the way the RSS system works, is that I can specialize in one thing, master one thing, but I can go do the rest of them just fine. But as a blacksmith, most of my effort is going to be focused on that. So I'm going to have to find someone who wants to be a miner to help supply my ore. Otherwise, I'm going to spend too much time trying to gather stuff and not enough time trying to craft things. Right. Whereas, in other MMOs, you could do both. Oh, I got a gathering profession and a crafting profession, and I use my gathering profession to fuel my crafting profession. That's not going to be the case necessarily in this game. So,
with all that just said, and I'm definitely going off topic with this.
A little bit, yeah.
No, yeah, but with this particular question, I'm actually going off topic. Because of all that we're seeing that's being put into this game, we're actually seeing it's going to be very, very complex. We're in agreement with that. So for someone who has never played an MMO ever, do you think Ashes would be a good first MMO?
I think it'd be a good experience in general. It's hard to say what's going to be a good first experience for an MMO because everyone has a different viewpoint. Like technically,
but at the same time, if you've never played another MMO, you're not tainted by the failings or the expectations of the other MMOs. For one,
that is true, but I think part of that is your perception on it. Technically, my first experience with an MMO was RuneScape, and a lot of people's was back then. I didn't ever really consider it an MMO. Like me personally, I don't consider that game an MMO. There's other players around.
I still don't.
But and then Guild Wars 1. It was I consider Guild Wars 1 an MMO light because while there were other players around, you didn't have to party with them. You went on a party with, when you did your little questy things, but you could do it with NPCs. I mean, they sucked, but you could do it with NPCs. So it was an MMO light, I thought. My first real experience with an MMO was Dark Age of Camelot was my first real experience with an MMO, and I didn't get to play that very much because WoW was coming out when I first started playing that, and then me and buddies transitioned over to WoW. So that was kind of where I grew up on an MMO, and I played a dozen others, but that's the majority of it was from WoW. And yeah, I don't know. I can't give a good opinion on whether it's going to be a good first experience for an MMO.
I would say if you're pondering that question as to whether or not you should jump into Ashes, if this would be a good first attempt, I would say, yeah, go for it, only in the aspect that you're on a learning curve with everyone else, because this is going to be quite different from every other MMO. And even those of us who have played a lot of other MMOs, I think we're going to have a very high learning curve with this game. We're going to be learning a lot
It's
of
going to be a
aspects of this
lot.
game.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot different than our normal pattern of an MMO.
So yeah, I think the new guy coming in, he's going to be just as lost as some of us who have played other freaking MMOs, religiously. And we all learn together, And if you since there's no box cost, that's a good thing. If you don't like it after playing it for a month,
you're out $15. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah. And this is my thing. Read up on the Ashes wiki. Read up on Ashes 101.
Tune into our show each week.
Tune into our show. We're not flawless. We don't know everything, but I feel like we're pretty knowledgeable. Watch other people's YouTube videos about this. No, you're not. I didn't hear what you said, but no, you're not. But just educate yourself as best you can. If you feel interested in this, if you don't feel interested in it, then I mean that's up to you. But I feel like you're watching this, so that must mean you have some interest at least. But
there's so many people with interest in this right now, and there's so many people, believe it or not, that just don't even know this game exists yet, and that just blows my freaking mind that a lot of people don't know that this game is on the horizon. So
it's not being publicized. It's at least not actively. It's being publicized only by the community.
It's all word of mouth right now, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
No, it's not. I think
reeling it back in,
bad hype away, but
yeah, let's reel it back into the actual current topic, which is about the seasons. So we touched base on economy. Now I'm going to touch base on caravans, because caravans will also be affected by the change of weather. Imagine that a blizzard has knocked down a tree, it has fallen on the road, the caravan will not be able to get by until that tree is removed, and it may take several people to accomplish this feat. I kind of like that kind of stuff. And then imagine if it's spring.
That as well.
Wait. Okay. Imagine if it's spring and there's a lot of rain. The roads have become all washed out and it's too muddy to use. Okay. What will your party do to get the caravan to safety, safely to its destination? Weather is going to come into effect here when moving these caravans.
So you bring up the tree aspect, which I like, because and I'm wondering if it's not just weather that could lay a tree in the road. If you're a bandit guild and you want to raid a caravan, could you possibly lay a tree in the road to slow them down?
That would be awesome.
But with that said, let's say you're the caravan, you're part of the caravan group. There's a tree in the road. If you're a lumberjack or a wood gatherer, whatever the hell they're called, I'm going to call them a lumberjack for lack of a better term. Are you able to remove that tree faster than someone who's not?
From what I understand, if this is happening, it would not be something that a solo person would be.
I'm not saying they could do it by themselves. Well, I mean, you could gather the fallen tree, is what I'm kind of suggesting. Not but that it would be.
But I'm saying if you've got a caravan people who are escorting and there's like 10 people, it's going to take everybody to sit there and help that freaking tree, and it might even still take time to get it moved.
So this is the thing. In the real world, even back in the day, if there was a tree in the road, if it was big enough, you didn't try moving the whole thing. You cut it up, and you move those bits. That's why I'm saying, if you're a lumberjack, are you able to do that faster than if someone's not a lumberjack? I
And
would
then they
think
may,
I would think that'd be the case.
and then it could also come down to not even removing it at all. Maybe it will make you take that lesser traveled route, a more dangerous route that you normally wouldn't take. Maybe it's that
Yeah,
split in two roads. So it's like, okay, we normally go this way, but there's a tree in the road there. We're gonna have to go this way.
that seems very storyline-ish. Like
Well, isn't that what
it
an MMO is?
if
It's,
you
it's
yeah, but if
writing
you
our own
okay,
story on
there
the server.
yeah, but that's writing your own story, not there's a fork in the road, but right at the beginning of the fork, there's a tree blocking this path, so go that way. Like, that just seems like it's very cartoony, very Looney Tunes ish to me.
Well, theory crafting, just saying, maybe, again,
I think
it
realistically,
kind of
if
goes
there's
back
a
to the whole aspect of like the lake being frozen. Normally, you would go all the way around the lake, but now when it's frozen, you can go across. If there's something, in the middle of the road, maybe you won't chop up the tree. You might just take an
but
alternate route.
people in the northern regions of the world, or even in the deep south on the southern hemisphere, where it actually lakes do get frozen over. I'm originally from Michigan, so for me, a lake being frozen over, you know what that meant? You could drive your snowmobile across it. Like that's a thing. That's a real world thing. And that's where I'm trying to go with this log situation. Realistically, if a tree is gonna be fallen blocking a path, you're gonna be surrounded by other trees. You're not gonna be able to you might be able to back the caravan up, turn the caravan around at some point, or you can remove that chunk of tree that's in the way and keep on going. And I think that's going to be the most logical case. It's going to be very rare, I think, that you're going to be able to just drive the caravan, around a different path. That's my point.
Okay. Well, I'm just, like I said, I'm just giving options here. Because maybe you don't have enough people escorting that caravan with you where you guys can properly take care of that tree that's in the road. Do you
And if
bring the
that's the
caravan
case,
all the way back?
I think you have to you back it up until you can find an alternate route, which is going to suck, but
Hey,
risk versus reward. So
welcome. Okay. So moving on. We're going to touch base on your actual character's abilities. Certain abilities may be enhanced or dampened by certain climates or weather happening at the time. For example, frost abilities might be stronger in the winter, fire abilities might be stronger in the summer, and lightning spells more powerful during rainstorms. This will make it so that a smart adventurer will have to make sure that he has a varied choice of skills on his bar. For example, a mage that specs himself all out in fire type skills might find that he's going to get his ass handed to him when doing combat during a rainstorm. These enhancements or dampenings effects will affect your character in both PvP and PvE. Thoughts?
So initially, you bring up the whole fire mage thing. Guess what he's doing in the wintertime? Crafting. He's staying at his freehold, crafting. I mean, maybe he might do PvE. I don't know, but
Well, this is why I would think you would
only
want to
gonna
have
be-
a little bit of a mixture of different types of spells on your bar. I mean,
But
this
there
is
has to
obviously
be-
going to affect mostly people who are spellcasters, unless weapons have some kind of effects, fire effects on your sword or whatever.
Have you watched Gladiator?
Yes.
The frost makes the blade stick, and that's true. If you don't oil your blade, it can stick in the sheath. And that I can't imagine they're going to do something as complicated as that, but they could. I don't think it's going to be based solely around elements though, because there's going to be other types of casters. Clerics
Well,
might
you
have.
said you said that you don't think they're going to do something as complicated as that, but one thing that they are talking about, and again, guys, this is something that they're discussing. They're actually talking about if you're traveling into a winter area, winter climate or whatever, that your character needs to be dressed warm enough to be in that area. So it's not only about your armor, it's about being freaking warm at this point too, or else you're going to start taking damage. You're going to start getting frostbite. You're going to freaking freeze to death.
And that's where it comes back to being prepared. I don't know, because let's say I'm going to be a blacksmith. I'm making a paladin, which means I'm most likely going to be wielding sword and board. I don't technically need a sheath. Technically, there's ways to harness a weapon without a sheath. So you could get around that unless they force you to have a sheath, which then I don't think they're gonna implement the whole blades being stuck in frosted in a sheath, but they might. What do you do with a warhammer? Warhammers don't have sheaths. There's no negative to that. So
yeah,
aside from weight, it's cold to your hands.
But what we're talking about is how your abilities, basically for spellcasters anyway, how your skills will actually be amplified or dampened by the weather that's happening.
I don't think it's going to be solely limited to spellcasters, especially not just elemental spells. I think there's going to have it'll have to have a greater impact, I believe. But then again, I don't know.
Okay. I just it brings the question too, if because they said it's going to have effects in both PvE and PvP. So I'm wondering if we're going to actually see these real world weather effects, or if seasons are actually going to affect something like battlegrounds.
They might, yeah, and we might not have like static battlegrounds like WoW did, where AV is always winter. I mean, and we might have a battleground that's always winter.
All right, moving on. Next will be events and holidays. Now, events in the world can trigger seasonal events. For example, a winter dragon may appear because a node has developed to stage 4. That dragon may bring eternal winter until it's killed, something that needs to be addressed before all the crops die, or worse.
I like that idea, but I think it brings back to the whole, is a week long enough for a season?
I agree.
So,
but I think it's going to be one of those things where if that kind of event happens, I think it's going to be like a rally call to everyone on the freaking server. It's like, we're stuck in eternal winter, man. We got to get this freaking dragon killed, and then you're going to have to form some kind of...
It also brings into question, this dragon spawned in this area because of this node. Is it going to be eternal winter everywhere, or is it going to be eternal winter in this node and its zone of influence?
Yeah.
Will it be limited? Because it's going to be that, to me, that makes more sense and it's more realistic. Because why would a dragon, over, let's say they're on the Western continent, why would he impact the weather patterns over on the Eastern continent, who had literally nothing to do with him being spawned?
No, it's a very good question. We don't know the answer to that yet.
Yeah, and we don't know. So it's something to think about. I wouldn't think that it would be server wide. I can't imagine it would be server wide, because it doesn't make sense. Because some people are not going to want to band together with this node because they're rivals with that node. But at the same time, if it's server wide eternal winter, they kind of have to get rid of the dragon, because they don't want to be stuck in the winter the whole time. So.
But this winter dragon appearing, and doing eternal winter for the area and everything, and that's one example as to how seasons could possibly affect this world and everything, and doing it through events is pretty cool. I like I said, I like it when companies think outside the box and bring something new to the table and everything. So if this is just one way, I'd love to see what other ways they're actually thinking about.
I mean, I could see it being the other way around. It's summertime when that node 4, that node hits stage 4, and then there's a fire dragon that gets spawned, and then there's a drought. It could be literally the opposite.
Let me ask you this. Let's take this into the real world then. Just like in the real world, while we have our change of seasons and everything, winter coming and all that kind of sometimes brings the flu. So, do you think we might start seeing something like sicknesses that happen within the game? That
I don't know
it's a kind of a
how
touchy subject, with the whole pandemic thing, but
with COVID, yeah. And that's kind of like it's a
it
little
just
early to be joking about that guy, but
and just to let you know, for moving forward, we never say that word, the C word. YouTube does not like that word. They ban some videos because of it.
why?
It,
Either way. So
it's a political thing. So we always say the pandemic.
Given the current health crisis,
There you go.
I don't
No,
know.
dude, you're
I've
good.
never
You're good.
seen a
You notice I
game
didn't say
that
it.
has diseases implemented well, at least not like naturally causing
I'll
ones.
bleep the word out.
Not in an MMO. If you want to play Pandemic, where you craft a virus and then it gets spread around the world and you try to murder everyone, those work quite well. I've never seen it done in an MMO. I've seen things like you get rabies from a wolf, diseases like that, but those are usually easily cured. I can't imagine there's going to be like a common cold that people
Well, let's go back to
have a
what they were
chance to
saying
get.
too. If
But
they're actually thinking that you have to dress warm enough in certain areas, or you start taking damage and you could die.
you do
They're-
not get the cold from being cold.
Well, I think that's what they say. So
No,
But-
that's literally false. You
No.
can get
No, no.
hypothermia from being cold, but you can get pneumonia from being cold, but you do not get the common cold from being cold.
this flu is nothing. This is huge. I am above this. We will handle this.
I feel like that's worse than saying the C word. But
All right. So we touch base on events and everything as far as sicknesses go in the world. We don't know if they're going to actually go that far. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. They're pushing the boundaries, so there's no telling how far they'll go with it.
We will see.
And a lot of stuff too. They may freaking introduce later on down the road. We're just worried about at least get the game out and get it up and running and everything. Later on, when you start coming out with these expansions and everything, maybe they'll introduce other stuff. It's going to take a lot of work on their end to maintain this game. That's a fact. But we touch base there on events. So holidays and our real world are not the same as the holidays in Vera, but our holidays and theirs will probably be similar and fall around the same time. So, for example, when it's Christmas here in the real world, we might get something called the Frost Festival in Vera. It's Christmas, but it's not. Regardless, some holidays can directly affect the weather to make the event more festive and believable. So snow might appear to give us a white frost festival, and rain and lightning might appear during Demon's Night, which is my made-up name for Halloween. Any thoughts on this?
I like it. So this is my only thing with. I'm from Michigan, so for me, having a white Christmas was it's like clockwork. Always happened. Intrepid is stationed in San Francisco, I believe. They don't get snow. People in Texas get snow, and they flip shit. There's a lot of states, and this is solely the United States. They don't get snow. They don't see it. Those of you who may be watching who are in Canada, you get it more than anybody else. People in Europe, depending on where you're at, the south of France, they don't get snow.
And again, there will be certain lands in this world that really don't see a change of season at all, and they made that very clear. Probably mostly the desert lands. The deserts probably won't change at all very much within a year.
But a desert doesn't necessarily mean that there's no snow. An actual desert can have snow. Antarctica is technically a desert, and it's covered in snow and ice. But either way, but how are they going to do that with the whole season? Well, their version of Christmas. Is it going to snow only then? Is it not going to snow at all down there? Like, that's stuff we just don't know. I I don't have a good opinion on it.
I think the whole holidays thing is going to be very similar to what we've seen in a lot of other MMOs. You know, they're going to start decorating things a little bit more festive for the holiday, especially Christmas. Christmas is
Yeah.
going to be the big one. But not every country shares the same holidays as every other country. So they might have like these made up name festivities that go on that Europeans know that's related to whatever they're celebrating at the time, but we're just thinking, over here in the States, we're just thinking, oh, okay, the Buju festival is going on right now. We have no idea
Yeah.
what it's actually collating to, but
Yeah, maybe
it is what it
maybe.
is. But around these times, we're going to expect that we'll probably, especially around Christmas, we're going to see some decorations that are kind of what we're used to seeing around Christmas. They may be decorating a tree, something similar, with things, to make it feel festive. And they're going to add the snow effects. The weather's going to change to give it that white, Christmassy, peaceful, jolly feeling. They might be adding music to make it, more engaging and more the word that we use at the very
It'd actually
beginning,
be interesting
immersive.
to hear what their Christmas holiday music would be, because I can't
There
imagine it'd be like
is
traditional.
there
Christmas
is
music.
actually it is there is
Oh, is it just like a straight rip? That's lame.
no there's a Christmas version from last Christmas. They made a Christmas video showing the town dressed up in Christmas gear and everything,
Yeah, but I don't
and
think that's going to be the same. I think that
it's
was more of a
got
teaser kind of thing.
maybe, but they played
I'm
like a
hoping they
very
changed. Yeah, I'm hoping
they
they changed.
they played a
So some of
very
that.
dark version of a popular Christmas song. So it was kind of weird because it was like dark, but still a song that you're familiar with from Christmas. It was kind of weird.
We'll
Um,
see.
yeah.
We will
So
see.
this moves us forward to my next thing as far as seasons go. Um, and talking more on freaking immersion, and we just touched base on it just a little bit with mentioning Christmas music, is sound. Sound has a big part of immersion. And what I'm hoping is, that they really go full effect with, while you got the changing seasons. I want to hear birds chirping in the springtime. When there's a big thunderstorm, I want to hear. I want it to almost, especially if it's during a really bad thunderstorm. I want the sound to be almost deafening, where I can't hear stuff around me because the water is hitting the puddles on the ground, the lightning is freaking smacking across the sky. That it's just crazy. Blizzards. I want to hear that freaking wind whipping, and not only affecting my visibility, but I want the sounds to actually be there. And I'm pretty sure that they're going to do a really really good part with the of doing the sounds with the game and everything. But I think it's a really 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 big part of the immersion.
I agree. Sound is as far as humans go, our first sight, or sorry, our first sense is sight. Our secondary is sound. So to us, we have to be able to see it and then be able to hear it. With that being said, I know we were discussing rogues the other day in stealth, and about how the way rogues predator like stealth system, a lot of people aren't going to like it. You bring up weather patterns and noise. I think a rogue would be just devastating in a blizzard. You'd never see a rogue coming in a blizzard
Oh,
or in a
now that would be
thunderstorm.
cool.
It would be way too hard to see them, even with their predator-ish. Yeah, on a clear day when they're standing on a grassy knoll, sure, there's not gonna be that hard to find. But in a storm, that seems quite intriguing.
Oh, assassins! I expect to be very optimistic and opportunists is what I was
Yes.
going to say. So yeah, there's a nice blizzard going on, or a nice rainstorm going on, and it gives me more cover of darkness and everything. Yeah, I can see them fully taking advantage of that. All right. Before we go into the last part here, because the last part here is closing thoughts. So, as far as seasons go and everything we just touched base on, do you have anything else that you think should be added to this conversation? Because I think we pretty much touched base on everything, but if there's other examples and everything.
I think we covered a lot. The as far as the economy thing goes, I know we were talking about like plants and gatherables. What about the animals you kill and you gain the little tokens off of? Those I can imagine the population of, or the spawning rate is going to decrease or increase depending on what season it is. So depending on what
Do you
region you're
think?
in, I
Do you
can see that being an impact. But
do you think seasons will have an effect to the point of, let's say, in this one particular area that you always go to, there's always a bunch of brown bears, but come wintertime, they're actually in hibernation and we're not seeing them. Maybe certain types of animals get replaced with different other kinds of animals because of the season.
I can totally see that being a thing, and that's partly why I brought it up, because if it's going to reduce a population on this certain animal, it might increase one on a different one, so that will help with price fluctuation. People are going to need certain materials, or even the merchants that you sell these little tokens to. It's going to change based on inflation. If there's not a lot being sold, they're going to be more valuable for you as the player. So I can see that being the case.
Um, and we're kind of skimming through my chat here and everything. Um, so during the Christmas event, would you like to see Santa as a world boss?
Has anyone watched The League? Because I think Krampus, which is like the anti-Santa,
Ooh,
would be hilarious to have, or a version like that. The League is a dumb TV show. If you guys haven't watched it, I highly encourage you to watch it, just as a time waster. But
yeah, I know of Krampus from Family Guy. All
but
right.
I like the idea of having like the anti-Santa, just as a world boss. Because fighting a good, traditional Santa, as you don't want to fight traditional Santa as a world boss.
And again, if they want to differentiate this world from our own real world and everything, create this yeah, kind of the bad version of Santa that we have to deal with every freaking Christmas. And
I
that's
think
part of
that'd
the
be fun.
celebration. After we kill him, we all get our Christmas
And
presents,
that's
and
and that's a reason to celebrate. Yeah.
that would be freaking really cool. All right, so closing thoughts. Okay, Intrepid wanted to design a truly changing world, and although people's choices definitely will help with that, changing seasons definitely adds more to the randomness of the world. Overall, personally, I am very happy with the direction and the complexity of the seasons that will be added to the game. Seasons and weather are not just a visual thing, they actually serve a purpose and supply real change into this vast world. I believe this game is going to be one that will keep many players engaged for years to come. And honestly, that's the MMO that we've all wanted to see created for many years. So, any thoughts on that? Yeah, you got any closing statements?
I mean, I agree with you. Really, I like the concept. I like the idea of it. I like all the intricacies of it. It's their shortened time frames. I that's the one thing, and I think a lot of
That
people
that
feel that way. It's the one thing that I think it's too short.
Steven, you gotta fix that,
But
man. It's just too short. You gotta make those seasons longer. We're
well, I
for
mean,
it. We're on par with this and everything. And changing seasons, weather is all good in every game we play. Weather is a fine thing to have, but you're adding so much more to it. The weather and seasons actually have a purpose. They're actually going to either hinder us or help us in some way. But the time limit, is just too short to make it immersive. If you want it to be in a believable world, that time limit has to be expanded.
and I think that time limit, with it being so short, it doesn't give you that value that something like this is inaccessible right now. So it'll be accessible in 3 days though. It doesn't have that same value of shit. I can't get into this for 3 weeks. Like that's a bigger impact that makes you cherish that thing more for those next 3
And
months
that makes
you
me
have it
feel
available
really
for.
bad for the
So-
guy who, like I said, can only play maybe once or twice a week, and when he logs on, every time he logs on, it's a freaking different season, you
Well,
know?
it doesn't make me feel bad for that guy, but it makes me feel like, one, he doesn't get to enjoy it, but at two, he doesn't realize necessarily what's happening because he only gets to play a very limited amount of time. So every time he logs in, it's a different season, but he doesn't know that. He just thinks it's a different weather pattern.
Yeah, I
Oh, it's
guess.
snowy today, and like,
Because I guess if you're playing that little, then you're probably not really engaging yourself too deeply in the whole economic part of the game in the first place.
no, and it takes part of that out of, that part of that game out that you don't get to experience at all. You experience it in a different way.
Do
But
you possibly think, with the exception of what we described with the whole lake being frozen over and not being able to get down to that dungeon that's at the bottom of the lake, do you think seasons will affect any of the actual raid dungeons in any way?
well, let's say summertime, there's a dungeon entrance. Spring and fall are a little difficult, possibly, but summertime, there's a dungeon entrance at the foothills of a volcano, but it's summertime, so there's an active lava flow over it. So you can't get in there. That could be a possibility.
One thing we didn't bring up too is some of the weather. It seems like winter is going to be the bad guy of all the freaking seasons. But one of the possible side effects we could see too from seasons is, especially during the winter, is an avalanche. Avalanche can happen
Yeah.
off the mountain, and that blocks the road or even blocks a dungeon entrance. Gotta wait and see.
But you could also have a rock slide in the spring,
during the rainy season.
during the rainy season, when snow's melting, you get a rock slide. I mean, realistically, you get a rock slide at any time, but
I for some reason I can see in my head already people freaking buying that Jon Snow freaking outfit from the cash shop and just running around. Winter's coming, and I can already see it.
yeah.
So,
But I don't know. Like, and you brought up the fact that like people might feel like winter is the bad guy, but if you look at it, if you look at the real world, winter, you get rid of all this technology we have. You go back to living a more primitive lifestyle. Everyone was more reclusive in the wintertime. You didn't go out that much because it was cold. You can't grow crops, etc. Like I grew up on a farm originally, so I know a little bit about farming. In the wintertime, you didn't have to do anything with your fields. You didn't have to do anything. You have to go harvest. None of that. You tended to your animals with the crops that you have stored. That was pretty much it. And then maintenance, like that's how winter was. Like I want to say it was more relaxing because it wasn't. It's definitely not. But there was less workload to go off of because you couldn't. There was just natural limitations for certain things. So.
gotcha. All right, guys, that's gonna wrap it up for this show. I think we covered a lot. Give you something to think about. I mean, weather is one of those things, that you just kind of know is going to be in the game, but you don't really give it much thought. And hopefully, we gave you a lot to think about tonight because this isn't going to be the same kind of weather system that we've seen in other games. There's a lot more to this, and especially if you're playing the whole economic game, you're going to have to think. You're really going to have to think as what your game plan is. As far as your crops, what to hold on to, what to sell, when to rotate. There's going to be a lot to it. So I'm looking forward to it. I think Gandex is definitely looking forward to it because he's going to be running his whole freaking blacksmithing business.
Oh, you guys don't even know how much I'm going to be into this. And just for reference, I am an amateur blacksmith myself, like in real life. That's partly why I'm doing this.
Oh, very cool.
So, but anyway,
okay,
Friday,
so
the 16th, we should be getting Alpha 1 release dates.
Awesome.
So stay tuned for
Big
that,
news.
guys.
Big news. All right, that's freaking awesome. All right, guys. If you're on Gandex's live stream right now. Show him some love. Okay, give him a follow. If you're watching me on Twitch, YouTube, D Live, or Trovo, give me a follow. Okay, we hope to see you again next week. I thought this was a good show, man. This was
I thought it was
informative.
good. Yeah, no, I liked it. It was a good subject. It was not a topic I was anticipating, to be honest, but I thought it was a good show.
I think it's one that a lot of people really haven't touched base on yet. It has more complexity than what most people think. So
I
it's
think
just one of
part of
those
that is
hind thought things, you know?
yeah, I think part of that is we don't know enough about it, and I don't think we will know enough about it until Alpha 1 and Alpha 2, and maybe not even Alpha 1. They might not implement it until Alpha 2, but we'll see.
Yes, sir. Sorry, Tavern
But-
Side Gaming. Yeah. The stream is freaking ending right now. All right, guys. Thank you, and we will catch you next week. Okay? Cheers, peace, be safe.